Hello my loves, thank you for joining me on another video. My name is Annie and I post solved, unsolved and missing persons cases here on my channel. If you enjoy this type of content, you're welcome. Please consider subscribing to my channel. Today's case brings us to Kenya, a country known for its world record-breaking athletes, its rich biodiversity and great safari destinations. It was here in 2019 the news of a missing mother and her children spread through the country like wildfire. Let's look into the case of Joyce Siombua. So Joyce Siombua was a very beautiful and loving woman who was brought up in a one-parent home. It's not clear what happened with her father, but she was raised by a single mother. She had no siblings, she was an only child. Even though money was tight, Joyce's mother, Elizabeth Mawa Malobe, wanted her daughter to have the best of chances and opportunities, so she made sure she went to school. After her primary education, she would proceed to the St. Bernard Secondary School in Kayole for her secondary education. At school, Joyce will meet her best friend, Farizana, and their friendship will continue even after graduation and for many more years. It was while at St. Bernard's that Joyce also met a young man called Peter Muguri. The two fell in love and would start dating. Peter was from Lari in Kiambu County of Kenya. He was raised in Nairobi and attended Mwangaza Primary and Upper Hill Secondary Schools. After his secondary education, he would then proceed to the University of Nairobi to study civil engineering. Peter was described by his family as a humble and harmless man who grew up with a clear vision and goals. He was soft-spoken and was generally a gentleman. He was the sixth child of his parents. Not much is said about his father, but his mother was called Hannah, and Hannah was very close to him. Now, in 2005, when the relationship between Joyce and Peter had started, the love-stricken Peter took the then 17-year-old Joyce to his family and introduced her to his mother, telling her he would like to marry Joyce soon as she graduated from school. His mother Hannah took a liking for Joyce and she would go to Joyce's mother Elizabeth to discuss their children getting married. Elizabeth, saying that her daughter was very in love with Peter, accepted that her daughter gets married to the man she loves. So immediately after her secondary education in 2009, the two will get married. By this time, Peter was in the military, the Air Force to be precise. He was stationed in Moi Air Base. At first, life was good, but soon enough the couple began to have marital issues. They would quarrel and argue a lot, and it was rumored that there were instances of domestic violence too. On top of this, there were issues of meddling in-laws. According to Joyce's mother Elizabeth, a few of Peter's relatives were opposed to the union and discouraged him from getting married to Joyce. But Peter had still insisted and married her anyway, so they were constantly interfering in their marriage. Their domestic issues increased and disturbed them both, but they were keeping it together and acting normal, like it was well, anytime they were out in public. In the midst of the chaos, Joyce got pregnant with her first child. She thought the fighting would stop, but it didn't stop. And by the time she was 8 months gone, the couple separated. After they separated, Peter's relatives, those same ones who didn't want Joyce as their in-law, went to collect his bags from the house he was living in with Joyce. They told her that he had told them to collect everything that belonged to him from that house. And Joyce, she decided to go back to her mother's house in Kayole. There was no point staying at that house anymore. After all, it was her matrimonial home, but now she was separated. There was no need staying there anymore. She had her daughter and named her Shanice. Even though they were separated, it was said that Peter may have wanted to reconcile with her again. A friend of Peter said Peter asked Joyce to get back together and she was willing to give it a try because she still loved him. But she didn't get back with him just yet, mainly because nothing had changed about Peter. He was not taking responsibility for their child. So in order to be able to take care of and provide and support her baby, Joyce took up a job at a bakery in Kayole, and with her income, she took care of both her child and her mother. Now, it was no longer a secret that the two had a troubled and very rocky relationship, but in the midst of all of this, in the twist of events, during one of those times they had tried to reconcile, Joyce would get pregnant again and have a second child in 2014, the son who she called Michael. The birth of Michael added more fuel to the fire as Peter denied fathering Michael and accused Joyce of being promiscuous. For 13 years, these two were going back and forth, on and off, with family issues, accusation of domestic violence and infidelity, paternity and trust issues, up until 2019 when Joyce had enough and she went straight to the court. Peter was not helping her with the kids since he said they were not his, so she was doing absolutely everything by herself. She had no other option than to ask the courts to intervene. She asked for child support and Peter was invited to appear in court. He said he couldn't support Joyce and the children because he didn't think the children were his. The court ordered a DNA test and it came back that Shanice and Michael were indeed Peter's kids. So sometime in July of 2019, Peter was ordered to pay 75,000 Kenya shillings monthly as child support to Joyce. Joyce was also granted full custody of the children, but she was allowed Peter to see his kids regularly at any time he wanted. This would be the reason why when Peter would ask to see his kids on October of 2019, Joyce would oblige without hesitation. Though it said that Peter was unhappy with the court ruling that ordered him to pay child support, he had actually been paying the 75,000 Kenyan shillings for 3 months up till October of 2019. Listen, I don't get it. When you choose to make children, they are your kids and your responsibility, especially when you have a good job and the means to take care of them. So I didn't see what the problem was for Peter, especially now that DNA had confirmed Shanice and Michael were his kids. Now, Shanice's 11th birthday was coming up on November the 1st, and according to Joyce's friend Farizana, Joyce told her that Peter called to say he would like to spend some time with the kids before the birthday party, so he doesn't look like a stranger to them since he hadn't seen them in a while. She also told her that Peter had sent money for her to bring them over to him at his station in Laikipia Air Base in Nairobi, where he had been working for about a year after he was transferred from the Moi Air Base. When Joyce told her mother she would be traveling to the airbase to visit her kid's father on his request, Elizabeth was not happy about it, and for good reasons. So let me tell you why. According to Elizabeth, in the week leading up to the paternity test and the court situation, the two children, 10-year-old Shanice and 5-year-old Michael, were allegedly poisoned by a stranger who posed as a teacher at their school. What happened was, that fateful day, the two were coming home from school and met a woman who posed as their teacher at Lakewood Schools. She bought them soda and mandazi. Mandazi is the Swahili name for a snack known as African donuts. It's just basically a deep-fried pouch-like bread, a snack that is very popular to children. So when this teacher bought the snack and drink for Shanice and Michael, the younger child Michael was very keen and he noticed the woman putting a substance that looked like black tea in the soda. He told his sister about it and they decided to take it home instead of drinking it. At home, another woman drank the soda. She felt weak afterwards and was unable to speak. It's not clear what happened to the woman afterwards, but both Elizabeth and Joyce concluded that the incident had something to do with a paternity case ongoing at the time, and this had worsened whatever relationship was left between Peter and Joyce. So you can imagine all the thought that was running through Elizabeth's mind when Joyce decided to honor Peter's invitation. She pleaded with her daughter in mid-October or thereabout to please terminate her plan of visiting her estranged husband Peter. Her intuition communicated to her that something bad was going to happen to her daughter and the grandchildren if they visited Peter in Laikipia. She even suggested that Joyce return to Peter's money, that is, the money he sent for transportation. She even suggested that Peter should come over to Kayole in Nairobi to see the children instead. Joyce, however, would not agree to this arrangement. So on the 25th of October 2019, Joyce Siongoa, her 10-year-old daughter Shanice, and the 5-year-old son Michael would head to Laikipia Air Base in Nanyuki to visit Major Peter Muguri, and this was the last time anyone would see them alive. Upon arrival, Joyce communicated her mother and her friend Farizana to tell them they had arrived safely. Later on that same day, she spoke with her friend again and told her that Peter had taken the children out, but weirdly, he did not return home with them. And when she asked about them, Peter said he had dropped them off at his friend's place so that they would have a private time to iron out their differences. Well, this explanation made some sense at the time, but Joyce was feeling some type of way about this because she and Peter had not discussed leaving the kids at any friend's house prior to this. Aside, she didn't even know these friends. She didn't know who they were. So how would he just go and drop her kids with people that she didn't know? So Joyce's friend listened to her vent and she calmed her down, promising to check on her again, which she did. She later called Joyce at about 7 p.m. on October the 26th, that is the next day, but her phone line was not reachable. By this time, Elizabeth was also trying to reach Joyce, but no one was able to get a hold of her. So after several attempts at getting Joyce and they couldn't, by Joyce's mother and friends, they went to the police and reported her missing without wasting any more time. The police will move quickly, and the first person to question was, of course, the last person that was known to have been with them. So Peter Mugure was questioned about the whereabouts of his family. Now, according to Peter, one day after their visit, he had escorted Joyce and the kids to a Nanyuki bus stop. That would be October the 26th, and they had boarded a Nairobi-bound Matatu, and that was the last time he interacted with his family. If you don't know what a Matatu is, it's just privately owned minibuses that are used as shared taxis. They are very popular in Kenya. Elizabeth, Joyce's mother, didn't agree with this version of the events. For some reason, she was sure that Peter had done something to her daughter and grandkids. They would not just disappear into thin air, you know. Detectives at the Department of Criminal Investigations will later trace Joyce's phone to a Matatu. The phone was left inside a Matatu and no one, even a passenger, and no one, not even the passengers, had noticed it. It seemed like that phone was planted there, in a way it will not be easily seen. Let me say the truth, that phone will not last an hour in that Matatu if someone had seen it just laying there in the open. Meanwhile, as the police were on their knees and toes looking for Joyce and the kids, if Peter Mugure at this point was doing anything to help look for his missing family, I am not sure, because right about this time he had gone on leave and was no longer at the base. To me, that was a sneaky move. How can your whole family be missing and you choose not to participate in the investigations, rather you choose to go on leave? Anyways, the police detectives on this case would then question the officers manning the gates at the Air Force Base so that you could at least find out if Joyce and the kids were seen coming and going from the base like Peter had said. So usually there's an account of every civilian coming in or leaving the base. It was in the course of this investigation that detectives came across a taxi driver who admitted that Major Peter Mugure had approached him to identify a location where he could dump bodies. Jackpot. Just like that, the case turned from that of missing persons to homicide. Peter was beginning to look more and more like a suspect, and that was when he would be taken in for questioning. How stupid could he be? He was acting all shades of guilty and evidence was beginning to lead to him. So when news broke that the estranged husband of the missing woman and her kids had been taken in as a person of interest, the story was everywhere and everyone was shocked. The case was about to take another turn. A 21-year-old man named Collins Pamba came forward to say he had a confession to make, and boy, he had story to tell. According to Collins, who was a casual worker at the airbase, he had received a call from Peter on October the 26th asking him to meet at the hotel. At the hotel, Peter directed him to go and wait for him at the base as he needed him to do some work. Pamba would say that Peter threatened to take his life if he declined to do what he wanted him to do for him. Pamba at this point didn't even know what Peter wanted him to do for him, but he was scared and confused, you know, with Peter being a major and him just being a casual worker. He was nobody. He asked Peter to tell him about the work he was supposed to do for him. Peter requested him to go and wait for him and that he was going to give him details immediately they met at the base. On getting to the officer's mess, Pamba waited and Peter didn't show up, so he went home. But around 10:30 p.m. that night, that's 26th of October, that's the next day after Joyce and the kids visited, Peter would take Pamba to a room A4. Mind you, Peter lived in A3, not A4. Getting there, he quickly locked the door and asked Pamba to sit on the bed and wait for further instructions. He then proceeded to the bathroom and used a phone flashlight to light up the bathroom. Maybe there was power outage or he deliberately switched off the light to avoid attention since A4 was not his room. Pamba said it was then he noticed something inside the bag that was well wrapped using ropes. After looking closely, he noticed some plaited hair popping from the bag. Immediately it hit him that what was inside that bag was a human body, even though the body was facing downwards. Few steps from the first bag, he noticed another luggage that had been sealed in the similar manner with a body that looked like that of a young boy. Peter then instructed Pamba, who was now in shock, to carry the two bags to the parking lot and load them in his car. Out of shock, In fear, Peter refused. He knew that he didn't want to be involved in this situation, but Peter then threatened to kill him and warned him never to tell anyone what he had seen in room A4, or else he would have signed his death warrant. In the same breath, Peter promised to enroll him in the military should he assist him. Agreeing to the deal, Pamba and Peter then took the two bodies and loaded them to a Subaru Impreza, which was in fact Peter's car. After this, the two men went to Peter's own room, A3, where Pamba found a body that belonged to Joyce. The body was covered with a black and white poncho. So he began helping the soldier wrap the body. According to him, he noticed marks on the body that clearly indicated that the lady had been strangled and also hit with a blunt object because she had injuries on her head. So after loading the three into Peter's car and covering them with a mat, the two drove out of the base without being checked at the gate. Pamba said Peter used his rank to his advantage. I mean, he was a major. That would be easy if he didn't want to be checked at the gate. Out of curiosity, Pamba asked Peter about the identity of the lady, and that's when he opened up that she was supposed to be his second wife and that she was the woman he loved. But her intentions were only to use him for his money, and she was not faithful to him, so he had to do what he did. Second wife. All these years, no one has said anything about Joyce being the second wife. However, it would later on come to light that Peter was also married to another woman who was an Air Force officer like him. So let's go back to Pamba's account of events. After reaching the public cemetery, they took the three bodies and dumped them inside an already dug grave and covered them up. The following day, the two met at the officers' mess where Peter gave Pamba 4,000 Kenya shillings, instructing him to submit his academic documents. I'm guessing this was in regards to the job he promised him. Then he further ordered him to go and clean up the mess in the both apartments at A4 and A3. Peter then left for an official leave, turning Pamba into a watchman. He will call now and then tell Pamba to pop up at the gravesite to make sure no one interfered with it. Now, when the first detectives came to the base asking questions, Peter had called Pamba and ordered him to act as if everything was okay and he should never show signs that he knew anything, nor should he reveal the secrets they were both hiding. After Pamba had revealed all of this to the authorities, it was then Peter was now officially placed under arrest. This was on the 5th of November 2019. Now, after his arrest, colleagues who didn't understand why the calm, cool, collected Peter could do such a thing claimed that the soldier might have been suffering from depression because he had crashed a plane. The story was that Peter had crashed an airplane as a trainee pilot, and as a result, he was grounded, and this was when his personal and mental problems began. He was beginning to show unnoticeable signs of depression, such as a time when he was seen by colleagues standing in the rain for hours while continually looking at his watch like he was waiting for something to happen at a particular time. Pamba would lead detectives to the location where they had buried the bodies, which was at a public graveyard in Makaburini, which is located in the Tingitu area in Laikipia County at about 4:30 p.m. that Saturday. On the 6th of November 2019, the bodies were exhumed and DNA would later confirm they were indeed that of the missing mother and her two children. On the 16th of November, Pamba was officially arrested for aiding in an attempt to conceal a murder case. Let's talk about Peter Mugure's family reaction to all of this. So Peter's mother, Hannah Mugure, said that she knew about Joyce's existence in 2005 when Peter introduced the then 17-year-old Joyce to her, and she said she visited Joyce's mother, Elizabeth, to discuss the wedding details. But one of Peter's sisters would say that Peter and Joyce developed irresolvable issues in their relationship in 2006, leading to the split, and that was the last time the family heard of their brother's love affair with Joyce. His family even claimed they were not aware that Peter and Joyce ever had children together. His mother said she was surprised to learn Peter had children because she never heard of them or saw them. Peter's other sister suggested that if he ever had children with any woman, he would have told them that her brother is an honest man and that she does not believe her brother did anything to Joyce and the children. They say that Peter had also visited them sometime in November, shortly before he was arrested. That means when the police were investigating and he had gone on leave, he went to be with his family. Yet he never mentioned to them that he had a whole family that was missing. Now, these facts, when I came across it in the course of my research, it got me even more confused. If the family claims not to know that Joyce was married to Peter, talk more of having two kids with him, who then attended their wedding, because in Africa, we have what we call bride price, which is paid to the wife's family, who then performed these rites on behalf of Peter's family, who were the relatives giving Joyce heat in her matrimonial home, who were those that had come to get Peter's properties. It's kind of confusing. Now, all of a sudden, all of them are claiming Joyce is not their wife. Honestly, things didn't add up for me when it came to this aspect of the case. I didn't find a satisfying explanation to this, so let's leave it alone and focus on the rest of the case. Now, while in police custody, it was said that Peter Mugure had sent a sister of his to Collins Pamba to ask him not to testify against him in court. You know, he was kind of like trying to twist his arm and manipulate the situation, but instead, Pamba did the opposite. He reported this visit to the authorities, entered the plea deal, and turned state witness against Peter Mugure. In return, his charges were then reduced from triple murder to accessory to murder, and he was sentenced to 5 years in prison for the part he played in this case. At the end of the day, a lot of factors were considered before his sentencing, such as his age and the fact that he was threatened by a senior military officer into helping him cover a crime. But the condition was that he will not be allowed to sue the state for compensation for the days he had spent in prison. Now let's go back to Peter Mugure. When he was arraigned in court, he for some reason refused to take a plea. Each time his charges were read, he would deviate, and instead of answering correctly, he would tell the judge he had something to explain. Eventually, the judge entered a not guilty. I don't know how that works if someone does not verbally or in a written form enter a plea, but that was what happened in this case. Following his arrest and charge, Peter Mugure, the former Kenyan Defense Force officer's contract, was terminated from the military on the 18th of November 2019 to pave way for his trial in a civilian court. And after this dismissal from the military, the government stopped paying his salary, so he had no job, and that meant no money was coming in. Peter Mugure will sue the ministry for stopping the remittance of his salary. I am not sure what became of that, but that's by the way. Now, Peter's story changes from the initial one where he said he had dropped his family off at the bus station to go back home. He now admits to the crime, and he had his reasons why he decided to take this heartless move. Peter said, quote, Joyce was unleashing her honeypot to men like a village hen, end quote. He also said she had gotten him infected with HIV, and when he asked her why she had intentionally infected him with the virus, she started accusing him of neglecting her bastards. He was referring to Shanice and Michael as bastards. According to him, she even called him a toothpick in front of the bastards. End quote, I could not stand it. This was my white body shaming me after infecting me with AIDS. End quote. Okay, this man admitted to carrying out something. Not something, a crime this horrible because he was called a toothpick. That part pained him a lot, I must say, but I mean, it takes one who is born evil to take a lie because he was called a toothpick, among other things. Well, that wasn't all. He also said that Joyce went ahead to mock him about the DNA issues they had. He said that Joyce had admitted that she had paid for the test to be doctored, that it was only the oldest child, Shanice, that was his child. The boy wasn't his, but she had made sure the results showed that the boy was his. I believe the DNA test was carried out by the courts, like I said earlier, not that they went to a random hospital to do it. So I really don't know what to say here, but no matter how you look at it, or no matter what reasons Peter gave for doing what he did, taking Joyce and the children out like that was not justified. Peter was represented at different times by 3 different lawyers. Then one day he said he would like to represent himself. He then applied to the court to allow him get back his vehicle and some personal items such as ATM cards and clothes, which were confiscated by the police, claiming these items were not part of the evidence. Well, he does have the right to choose whom to represent him, including himself, but the vehicle was not given back to him since it was the same one used to convey the bodies to the place where they were found. It's evidence. The murder case had been hit by delays and was mainly affected by the transfer of the judge who first handled the matter. 2 more judges would hear the case. The 3rd judge in charge of the case, however, recused herself from the case. I think it was on grounds that she had handled another matter involving the suspect, but we are not going into all of that. As of now, it's not clear what has become of this case. I couldn't find any recent update on the case as at the time this video was made. If you're Kenyan and you're watching, and you have any latest information in regards to Peter Mugure's sentencing, please leave it in the comments. I will appreciate. So that's it for today, guys. Let me know what you think about this case in the comments. Remember to subscribe to my channel and like the video if this is your type of content. If you have any case you think I should cover, please send it to me on my DM, my Instagram. If you haven't watched the playlist for solved cases, you can check them out. Until next video, bye.